So what happens when a country that's famous for free markets suddenly just seizes a private company? I know, it sounds hypothetical, but it's not. It just happened in the Netherlands. And this one single event is sending massive shockwaves through the global tech and auto industries. And it's revealing this dangerous new front in the tech war between the US and China. So let's dig in and break down how we got here.
And this is the core question, right? I mean, the Netherlands is practically a poster child for free market capitalism. So for them to seize a private company feels completely out of character. Why on earth would they do it? Well, the answer isn't simple. It's more like a trail of breadcrumbs that leads right into a super high-stakes geopolitical showdown.
Okay, so the story really kicks off with the seizure itself. And this was something else. The Dutch government basically reached way back in time, dusted off this old, dormant law from the Cold War, and used it for the very first time on a single tech company. Just think about how wild that is. This was an emergency law that was designed for wartime shortages. For the Netherlands to pull this out and use it against the tech firm, that tells you everything you need to know. This wasn't just some business dispute. Nope, this was being treated as a full-on matter of national security.
So who was the target of this pretty extraordinary move? Well, the company at the center of this whole storm is what's called a legacy chip firm, and it's named Nexperia. So Nexperia actually has these really deep European roots. It was born from the Dutch tech giant Philips. But then in 2018, it got acquired by China's Wingtech. And this created this really complicated identity. You've got a European company, but with Chinese ownership. And that put it directly in the crosshairs of this growing tech war. Now, this is a really key distinction. Nexperia doesn't make those flashy, super cutting-edge chips that go into, the latest smartphone. They make legacy chips, the simple, foundational workhorses of the electronics world. But you can't let that name fool you. These chips are in absolutely everything. 90 billion parts a year. I mean, that is the kind of scale we're talking about here. And a huge chunk of those parts go into cars, which makes Nexperia an absolutely critical supplier to the global auto industry. And that vulnerability, well, that's the real core of this crisis.
So, how did it all come to this? I mean, this seizure didn't just happen in a vacuum. For months, there was this covert battle raging behind the scenes between the US and China, with the Netherlands caught right in the middle. This timeline really shows you how the pressure was building. First, the U.S. sanctions Nexperia's parent company, Wingtech. Then, the U.S. drops the 50% rule, a huge move that basically meant any company with over 50% Chinese ownership, like Nexperia, was now subject to those sanctions. The screws were tightening. And then just one day after that rule change, the Netherlands secretly activates the seizure law. The public didn't find out for weeks. This wasn't some snap decision. This was a calculated endgame.
And this is where the official story just completely falls apart. Publicly, the Dutch government was saying, nope, the US wasn't involved, the timing is a total coincidence. But then you look at court documents and they reveal a direct message from US officials pretty much telling them they had to act. So yeah, this wasn't a coincidence. It looks a whole lot more like an ultimatum.
But seizing the company wasn't the end of the story. Not by a long shot. In fact, it was just the beginning of a really dangerous chain reaction. The moment the Netherlands made its move, it triggered this series of retaliations that are now threatening an entire global industry.
You can just see the dominoes fall, one after another. The seizure leads to a retaliatory export ban from China. The US then escalates with a massive tariff hike. It's just a classic tit-for-tat spiral, and it's pulling the entire global economy deeper and deeper into the conflict.
And you have to remember, China has some serious cards to play here. It completely dominates the production of rare earth elements. We're talking 70% of the world's supply. And these are essential for everything from electric vehicles to advanced defense systems. And you better believe Beijing started using that leverage, immediately tightening its export controls.
And hey, this isn't some theoretical, far-off problem. The Alliance for Automotive Innovation, which represents basically every major car maker, think GM, Toyota, Ford, they put out this really urgent warning. They said flat out that without these specific chips, their factories could grind to a halt within weeks.
And here's the critical vulnerability, the weak link in the whole system. The chips themselves are made in Europe, right? But then they get sent to China for final assembly. So by banning the export of the finished product, China made this brilliant strategic move. It effectively trapped these European-made chips inside its borders, and it broke the supply chain at its absolute weakest point.
So, if we take a step back here, what we're seeing is that this single event is really just a symptom of a much, much larger global shift. The whole Nexperia case isn't just an isolated incident, it's a preview of a brand new era of conflict.
You've probably heard this phrase, and it says everything. Semiconductors are the new oil. For decades, they were just another component in a gadget. But now, governments see them as a strategic resource, as vital to a country as oil was in the 20th century. And when the stakes get that high, well, the old rules of free trade just get thrown right out the window.
We are witnessing a massive rewiring of the entire global economy. It's no longer just about who can make something the cheapest. Now, the big question is, who do you trust? We're shifting away from a globally integrated system to one that's built on politically aligned blocks, a world where a company's passport suddenly matters more than ever before.
And this leaves us all with the central dilemma of our time. The Nexperia case is forcing every government and every major corporation to choose. Do you stick with the low costs that come from a globalized supply chain? Or do you play a premium for national security and resilience? And believe me, there is no easy answer to that question. The Nexperia crisis is really a wake-up call. It's a clear sign that the ground is shifting right under our feet, and it's forcing all of us to ask, in this new era, what is the true cost of a single microchip? Thanks so much for digging into this with me today.